Christy, welcome back to my channel and welcome to day 17 of my 2022 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be making a card using Mama Elephant's Secret Santa and Busy Elves. So I have stamped those images out on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock with Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers. I'm starting with my elves, and I'm going to do two of them with this skin combo using E00, E11, and E13. So I started with the E13 up under the hat, where that would be casting a shadow on the face, and then at the bottom of the hands, and then I'm going to blend that out with E11. And then I used E00 for the highlight at the lower part of the face. And then I'm just going to randomly choose another elf to do with the same combo, like I said, repeating that same process. For Santa and the other elf, I wanted to just do a slightly different skin combo, so I took away the E13 and added in the E000. So I'm starting with the E11 as my darkest now, and blending out with the E00, and then using the E000 for the highlight. For Santa, I also colored in his nose with that E11, so it would be just a little bit darker there. And I was trying to decide whether or not to give him gloves, but I ended up coloring his hands the same shades as his face. And then I'm going to give them some rosy cheeks using R20. I also poured out the R11 in case I needed to blend that out, but I ended up not needing to since they were still like freshly colored and that ink kind of just dispersed into the skin tones. So then I'm going to use E53, E55, and E57 to color in some of their hair. I'm just doing very simple coloring since you don't see a lot of it. So I put the E57 closest to the hat where that would be casting a shadow, and then blended down with the E55, and then use the E53 for a highlight at the end. And then I'm going to choose another one of these little characters to do with the same combo. And I did squeeze all three shades in there, even though it was super small. And then I'm going to also do Santa's teddy bear with these shades. So I'm just shading him on the left-hand side since he's tipped a little bit toward the left, and the light would kind of be falling on his face where that is turned upward. So blending out with the mid-tone and then using the highlight on the face and the belly, and I'll also add a little bit of that to the arms and legs. And then there's another tiny little teddy bear hanging out of the other sack of gifts. So cute. I just love that little guy. So I'm going to do him with that same combo as well, but this time I'm going to do the shadows on the right and the highlight on the left. Then I'm going to bring in the E51, and I'm going to use these lightest three shades for the little stuffed reindeer. So I'm starting with the E55 and blending out with the E53, and then I'll use that E51 for the highlight, and then I'll use the E57 to color in the antlers, and I just did those solid since they were really skinny. And then I'll do the last elf's hair in the same combo that I used on the reindeer. So started with the E55, blended out with the E53, and then use the E51 for the highlight on the ends. Then I'm going to take away the E55 and bring in the E50, and I'm going to do the wooden blocks. And I put the shadow at the bottom of each of those and blended toward the top for the highlight. And then I'll keep those shades out and do the two sacks of gifts. So I'm going to do the one that Santa is carrying over his shoulder, putting the shadows on the left-hand side since his body would be casting one on it. And then I'll have the highlight over on the right. And then for the other sack, I'm just going to reverse it. Also, I only use the darkest two shades on kind of the top lip of the bag just to give it a different look. But I use all three shades on the lower part. And then I also use that E50 to just add a tiny bit of shading to Santa's beard. Not too crazy, just wanted a little bit of softness there. And then I also am going to use that on the white parts of my candy canes. Next, I'm going to bring in some red, and I'm going to use R24, R29, and R39. So there's going to be quite a bit of red on this scene, little pops all over. So I'm going to do Santa's suit with red. I'm going to add some shading to the top brim of his hat, or right above the brim, I should say. And then right under his beard, where the fabric is kind of overlapping at the front, the two parts of that, and then on the inside of his sleeve and the inside of his legs, using that R39 for all of that, and then blending out with the R29, and then I'll use the R24 to just add a bit of brightness for the top of the hat, the outer edge of the sleeve, the front of his little belly, and then the edges of his pant legs as well. And then I'm going to hop around and do some other little accessory images. I'm going to do the heart on this toy ball to be red, and then I'm going to do every other stripe on both of the candy canes. I'm just starting with the stripe on the end and then skipping over every other one. So because those reds are so much darker, I can color right over the cream shade that I already laid in. It was just so much easier to just lay it in as one stripe and then color in the red sections. So it's just a little tip. It makes it easier than having to go and do every single one of the white stripes individually. So I could have done the same thing for the elves' sleeves of their shirts, because they are that stripe, and at the time I didn't, because I wasn't sure how I wanted to color their little outfits, but I ended up doing red and white striped shirts under their little green jumpers. So I could have saved myself a little bit of time and colored in the white stripes the same way that I did the candy canes, but I will have to go back and color those in with the cream colored shades later on and just go one by one. But before I do that, I'm going to continue with the red shades that I've got out, and I decided to give them red boots to match their shirts. So I'm just adding the R39 on the inner part and then blending toward the outside edge with the R29, and then using the R24 for the highlight. And then I debated back and forth about whether to do their hats red or just to do the little ruffle above the hat red or on the hat. And I ended up doing the ruffle, and I colored all of their outfits exactly the same. So I started with the R39 and just did like a little line at the top edge there, right above the hat brim, the bottom edge of the ruffle. And then I just blended that out with the R24 because it was such a small little area that there wasn't room for all three shades. So I just went from the darkest to the lightest on those. And then finally, I'm going to do the two bows on the little gifts, one that's sticking out of the sack and then the other one in the elf's hands. And then I'm going to add the R24 to the top of two of the blocks just to give them a little pop of color. And I'll do the other two in green later on. In the meantime, I'm going to do the white parts of Santa's outfit, the brim of his hat and the cuff of his jacket and the hem, and I'm using W1 and W00 for that, and I decided to use those for the white stripes on the elves' shirts as well, just so that they didn't look exactly like the candy canes, since the one is holding them right in front of his shirt. I'm also going to color the center part of the ball to be white, so I'm using those same two shades and then just letting the center be white. And then I'm going to move on to my green combo. I'm using G40, G43, and G46, And like I said, I'm going to do all of their little onesie jumpers in green. Everybody's going to look the same, so they're all decked out in matching outfits. So my idea for this card was that the elves are having like their office Christmas party. So they're taking it outside and they're going to be kind of like setting up the gift exchange and everything underneath the Christmas trees. So anyway, so for these green outfits, I started with the G46 and blend it out with the G43, and then I'm using the G40 for the highlight, and I just kept the shadows consistent with how I did the rest of the body and the highlight on the opposite side. And then I'm going to do their hats to match. So the rest of the hat is all going to be green, both the top part and the brim. I almost did the brim in white, but I decided to just keep it green. So adding that G46 to the brim on the edge where their shading is, and then right above that ruffle because the ruffle would also be casting a shadow. And then blending up with the G43, and I'm using like little circular motions to break up the edge of that G46 because it is a bit darker than the G43, quite a bit darker. So I just want to make sure that I get a nice transition and that I'm not leaving behind harsh lines where those colors meet. And then I'll use the G40 for a nice highlight on the front side of their face and then the top of the hat as well. I wanted to keep the color palette on this one very traditional, so I'm not going to do any other like pops of colors. It's just the red and green and a little bit of white in here plus the neutral shades. So I'm doing some of the gifts in the sacks with these greens. Also the gift in the elf's hand. I just used more of the G46 and then a little of the G43 so it looked different than his outfit. I also colored in all of their buttons with the G46. And then I'm going to do the top of the ball and the bottom of the ball actually with just those darkest two shades as well. I'll put a stripe on the top of the other two blocks with the G43 and then colored in the other little gift that was poking out, and then I just went back to the first one and used more G46 to make it darker so they didn't look identical. And then for the golden stars and the jingle bells, I went with Y11, Y21, and Y26. So the Y21 and the Y26 are really more of a golden tone. And then the Y11 has more of like a pure yellow in it. So it just warms that combo up a bit. So I'm going to do all of the stars and the jingle bells. And then there was something in Santa's bag. I decided to do that in gold as well. And then I did also give Santa a gold button on his jacket. For Santa's little boots, I used W5 and W7. So he has some little black boots. And then I decided to do the Christmas tree to look like it was just covered in snow. Since I had a lot of green going on with their outfits, I just wanted it to look really snowy. So I'm using BG10 and BG11 for that. Adding a little BG11 first, and then I'm going to blend that out with the BG10 and leave most of the tree to just be white. So it really has that frosty look on the edges, but it looks like it's completely covered in snow. And then I'm going to do 2 extra trees off screen. And once I finish with that, I'm going to trim these images out with their matching dies. For my background, I'm going to take the Mama Elephant Magic Snow Cover and run that through my die cutting machine with a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock. And then I want to add some Distress Oxides to that to color it in to be a sky. So I'm going to start with some Salvage Patina, and I'm bringing that in from the top edges. I'm not going to worry about the bottom because it's going to get covered up. In fact, quite a bit of this is actually going to get covered up in the end scene here, but I wanted to have a nice blend on that sky. So I'm bringing in that Salvage Patina and making sure that it's darker around the outside edges. And then in the center, I'm going to switch to some tumbled glass. so that it's more of that frosty blue look and not quite so aqua. So I think the two together are really nice, especially because that tumbled glass is really pale, so it just makes a nice transition down toward the bottom edge of the scene. So I'm making sure to go over some of that selvage patina so that they blend well together. And I'm just going to work my way back and forth between those two Distress Oxide tools and, add a bit more of that selvage patina around the outside edges, again, to darken it up, and just go back and forth. It takes a few tries to get a nice blend with Distress inks and Distress Oxides. They just need a few layers to get them to be smoothed out. Then I'm going to take some liquid stardust from Lawn Fawn and squirt that onto a block. I should have added a little bit of water to it to thin it down because the droplets that I got were a little larger than what I personally prefer, but it's fine. I am going to add a little bit of water to it after I realize and do some more splatters so I get some smaller droplets as well and they're not only large ones. And then I'm going to let that dry for a few seconds and then blot it up with a paper towel. You don't have to do that. You can just let it dry. But I wanted to tone down some of that yellow hue and just leave behind the sparkle. Then to give it a little more interest, I'm going to take some Peacock Feathers Distress Oxide ink and I'm going to mix that with whatever liquid stardust is still on my block, and then I'll splatter that on the background as well. Just gives it a little more contrast so there's something different going on. And then of course I wanted to add some snow, so I'm going to take my Dr. P.H. Martin's Bleed Proof White and I'll take a little bit of that out of the jar. This is a thick white paint, so I am going to add some water to that as well, and then I will splatter that all over the background. So I'm just making sure to tap that against my fingers so I get smaller droplets. I don't want any more of the larger ones, so that it really does look like snowfall. And then I'll set this panel aside to dry. Then I'll take the Hello Bluebird Hill and Dale dies, and I die cut 2 snowdrifts out of some more white cardstock. And I'm just going to use the scrap piece that I die cut my images out of so I don't get Copics all over my work surface. But I'm going back to my BG11 and BG10 and just adding that same frosty glow to the top edge of the snow as I did on the trees. So everything really matches nicely. So just a really quick and easy stripe at the top with the BG11 first, and then going over that with the BG10 to kind of mute it a bit, and then I'll just let that dry. So after I'm done with that, I'm going to take the smaller of those 2 hills and pop that in my Misty so that I can stamp my sentiment. I'm going to do that in VersaFine Onyx Black ink because it's such a nice crisp black ink. And I'm taking the sentiment from the Secret Santa set, and it says, "Have yourself a merry little Christmas." And I'm going to stamp that down twice to make sure it's very nice and bold. And I pushed down a little bit extra in the center because it was a little bit lighter there. So then I'm going to pop my card base in my Misty. I'm using Lawn Fawn Peacock cardstock and Peacock ink. And again, I'm going to take my image and the sentiment from the Secret Santa set. It says you're on the nice list, and it's got Santa holding his little list there. And I did stamp that down quite a few times again so that it stands out since this ink dries back. And then I'm ready to start assembling. So I'm going to take my background piece first and glue that to my card front. And I'm just going to kind of press it at the corners to make sure it's on there nice and straight. And then I'm going to take my taller snowdrift and I'm going to glue that down with liquid glue as well, using my Barely Art Precision Craft Glue. And I'm putting that pretty high up on the scene. I wanted, there to be a lot of space down below for all of my little characters to be interacting and setting up their holiday Christmas party. And then for the lower snowdrift, I'm going to pop that up with some foam tape. So I'm just lining that up with the bottom two corners and then pressing that down into place. Then I'll bring in my images and I'm going to lay everything out before I start adhering things down. The glue that I'm using dries super fast. It's a great glue, but it does dry really fast, so it's hard to adjust things after the fact. And because this is like a larger scene with a lot going on, I really want to make sure I've got my placement right. Also, a few of the images are going to need some foam tape so that they are level as they start on the popped up panel but then end above it, so they'll need some foam tape to balance them out. So just making sure that I know where I'm going to put things, and then I can carefully start to pick them up and add that glue and then place them down. And I work from the back forward, so I'm starting with the larger trees, the one on the right first, and then adding the elf that's going in front of him, that tree, and then I'll go to the one on the left, and then Santa's kind of coming over the hill with his bag of gifts to join the elves that are setting up the party. So I'm going to have him kind of creeping over the hillside there, standing on that 1 foot. Just makes him look a little bit more comical, which is fun. So I added some foam tape to the top of this last tree so it can be level like I mentioned, and then I'll use liquid glue down at the bottom, and I'm going to pop that up in the center. And then I've also added some foam tape to the top of the other two elves' hats where they're going to be overlapping that first snowdrift as well. So I'm just working my way around the last few images in this scene, making sure that they are adhered well. And then I have everything kind of balanced nicely. So I have an elf on either side at the lower part, and then I have the sack of gifts on the right, and then the blocks and the ball on the left side of the tree. So everything just looks really nice and symmetrical, which is how I like things to be a lot of the time. It's just more pleasing to my own eye. So now that I'm done with my images, I wanted to add some glitter. So I'm going to put it on all of the gold elements. So the 3 star toppers on the Christmas tree, also the 3 jingle bells. I'm going to put it on the whites of Santa's outfit, so his hat brim and his hem and cuff and the pom-pom, and also the little red heart on the ball. So just working my way around, adding that little bit of sparkle for the holidays, making it nice and festive. And then I'm going to add it to all of the snow as well. So I'm just following the BG marker lines that I colored in. So the bottom edges of each of the tiers of trees. And then I'm also going to do the snow to match. So I'll just follow that edge of the snowdrifts. I think you can never go wrong with sparkle on a holiday card. Plus the Stardust Stickles is practically clear, so it really doesn't add too much to take away from like the images or the coloring. It just kind of emphasizes everything, and so I think it's the perfect touch. So once I am done with that, I am going to follow the edge of those snowdrifts like I mentioned, just going on the parts that I can see, making it quick and easy. And that is going to finish up this card. So I will lift that up to the camera so you can see all of the detail and catch a glimpse of that sparkle and shine. And there's another peek at the inside. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I absolutely adore these cute little images, and I had so much fun coloring them up for you today and just creating a happy little scene. If you did enjoy it, please go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. I post new videos for you every Monday and Friday. All of the products I use will be listed for you in the description bar below. And here is day 17 of the previous 2 years of holiday card series. You can click on either one to check them out. Thank you so much for spending your time with me today. I hope you had a good one, and I'll see you soon in another video. Bye-bye.